Hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is going to be a bit of a more, I guess, sad one. It might take me a few takes to actually film this, and that's why I might be in a few different clothes, or it'll be different days basically. Because this one's really important to me and I've wanted to do it for a while. I'll explain why in a bit, but as you've seen by the title, this is kind of a discussing my story. Let's put it like that, video. This video isn't meant for making people pity me or gaining sympathy or anything like that. It's not the point, and I'm not going to go into detail about what actually happened because I just think it's not helpful. People don't need to know that. That's just something that I'm going to have to live with, and that I know happened no matter what people say. Basically, I know what happened, and they know what happened too. It's not, but we're not going to talk about that too much. The point of this video is to raise awareness about the consequences of these things. The best way of describing it is, if you know the song by Lady Gaga, this is a weird way of explaining it, but you know what I mean, called Until It Happens to You. That is the only way to explain it. You just won't understand it. You can try, you can read lots of different perspectives of how people have reacted to it, and try and get into that experience, but you can never fully picture the consequences it has on people's life until it actually happens to you. And I would never ever wish it on my worst enemy, but that's just a fact. And so I've never expected anybody, my friends, anybody I told about it, to understand it at that level. I kind of expected a kind of appreciation for the struggle, which I didn't get off of everybody, which I'll talk about a bit later. I'm not going to name names, so I'm not going to make it clear who people are, but there are a lot of people who disappointed me, which I think is almost the worst thing, or at least is the second worst thing of this whole thing. But that's my disclaimer, that this is for awareness purposes. This is not for sympathy. I don't want, people going like, oh, I'm so sorry this happened to you or whatever, because it happens to too many people, it happens to so many people, and it's just awful. No, it's just awful. And I'm not saying awareness will stop people doing this, because the people who do it, it's not ignorance. Or at least in my opinion, it's not ignorance. It's just disregard, really. Self-entitlement. That's all it really is. As I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail about what actually happened, because I just don't think it's appropriate on this platform. I don't think I need to tell lots of people about what happened. Some people know. The reason I'm talking about this now is because I did report what happened to the police, and it got dropped recently, a week ago, and that was incredibly hard. Incredibly hard. A lot harder than I expected it to be, because I knew that was going to happen. I didn't expect for a minute that I was going to be part of the 30% that go to the CPS, and then 4% that actually get charged. I wasn't even hoping for that, really. The point of it was more, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if in the future he did it again, and then I hadn't said anything and his name wasn't on the register. So my case has just been dropped, and this is probably not going up for a while now, because I'm going to need to take some time to process it. But I just wanted to document that I am feeling, well, I mean, it's obvious how I'm feeling, kind of broken. The point in this video is just to show that, I don't know, this is what it does to people. It's been a year and 4 months since it happened, and I've just been victimised over and over again since it, it doesn't end. just know that if it's happened to you, it is hard. If it hasn't happened to you, know it is hard, but life goes on. And one of my friends was brilliant and really convinced me to go, and I will forever be grateful for her, because I don't think I would have done it. And honestly, I'm not saying it's been a good process, it hasn't, but she's the reason I went and reported it. So that's the first thing. Don't judge people. Don't judge girls or guys who don't report it, because I'm not gonna lie, it's an awful process. Like, I've been victimized so many times throughout this process, and I'm not gonna sit here and, well, I might later, we'll see, talk badly about the police, because there are some great police officers, and I will talk about how I've come into contact with some great police officers. There are other ones who made me feel like it was my fault in a time when I was still blaming myself. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna, other than that, I was really drunk when it happened. I was at a party. Everybody found out that something had happened the next day, and gossip started. And I think that was one of the hardest things at the time, because it's like, this is my life. This is something that I was having panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I wasn't sleeping. I found it hard to eat. It's not a joke. It's not funny. It's not gossip. And that's what it became. Because I guess that's human instinct, really. And it might seem like I'm kind of keeping very matter of fact about it, but I think that's more numbness. I take anxiety medication. I'll talk about it about later in the video, so that kind of helps, I think. After it happened, I had only lost my virginity that day to somebody else. I wasn't going out with anybody. It wasn't like I wasn't in a relationship, and you can call me whatever, it was like a friend with benefits, I guess, sort of. But I only ever slept with him once, and later that day it happened. As I say, I was incredibly drunk, to the point where I passed out on a sofa. And as I say, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but my phone was broken, I couldn't go home. I said no multiple times. Not that it matters, because it doesn't matter. Consent is not, you can't just assume consent, but that I said no multiple times, which then led me the next day to have slept over, to blame myself a lot. And I think I would have blamed myself anyway, even if I'd gone home. If somebody came to me, if another girl on the internet or came to me and said, oh, I shouldn't have worn such a slutty outfit, or I shouldn't have provoked him, or I shouldn't have drunk so much, and I would just go, that's such bullshit. Like, a rapist is gonna do what they're gonna do. Yet, when it came to myself, it was a completely different story. I blamed myself a lot, and I still struggle, because part of me knows, obviously it's not my fault, and then the other half is like, oh, but you could have just not gone to the party, you could have, not gone upstairs, you could have not drunk so much, you could have not done this and that and this and that, and I kind of, it's so confusing. It's difficult to describe what happened as a consequence of it, because I went to the Ark Centre, and that was a dreadful experience. Awful experience. One of the loveliest police officers, well, he was an ex-police officer. I will forever ever be thankful for him as well, because he was just so lovely and welcoming, and made me feel valid. And I think that's the last time I felt by a professional. Well, no, that's not true. That's the last time I fully felt like a professional believed me. And it's hard to say that, because I thought going into it I would at least be believed. At least, maybe not like, oh, this definitely happened, but believed in the sense of the huge impact it had on me. Like, I'd had anxiety, well, not anxiety, I'd had episodes of anxiety that came with depression from the age of around year 9. Year 9, I had issues with depression and signs of an eating disorder, and I went to hospital, not for the eating disorder. Still, I was getting my life into a good place. As a lot of people who will watch this know, I had a hard time with, I don't know how to describe this because I don't want to out him. It's hard not to, but there was a guy I was talking to in sixth form. Although I didn't expect much off of him, I confided in him. He was one of the first people I confided in, because it was weird, and I don't know how to describe it, and it's another thing that I think you wouldn't get until you went through it, but I wanted a guy friend who understood it, or who tried to be there for me, because I'd lost all trust in men, really. The guy I was with, or not really with, the guy who I had lost my virginity to, and I'm sorry to him if he's watching this, but I'm not actually sorry, because it was a time when I needed someone, and he wasn't there. And you know, you'd think that somebody like that would be there for you, especially in that time, but the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, so you had sex twice in one day?" And I don't think he's apologised for it since, but I don't think he quite understands how much that almost stabbed me, because I was already blaming myself for even losing my virginity. And I remember breaking down at a party to a different guy and just crying to him for an hour or whatever time, and saying that it's kind of like karma, and him saying that's silly, that's ridiculous, and I think he's the only guy other than my current boyfriend who at the time supported me. And you don't expect it from places like that. He wasn't somebody I was close with. I've never been particularly close with him, and it meant a lot, even as someone who I wasn't close with him at the time. And I apologise to him right now, actually. If he's watching, and he knows who he is, then I am sorry for just being so difficult, really, after everything, because it's my fault. I take responsibility. I shouldn't push people away, and that's what I do, and I'm working on it. He really helped, I think, because I was having 4 anxiety attacks a day. I'd never been diagnosed with anxiety until then, so that was the first time I got diagnosed with anxiety. I started taking medication. I just remember breaking down. Like, honestly, I thought I was going to fail my A-levels, because it was during my A-levels, during that period anyway. I remember breaking down in the middle of like the quad at this specific day. I remember going into form and somebody asking me if I'd been doing drugs, because my eyes were all red. And I don't really know why that affected me so much. When I spoke to my ex, he was so lovely about it at first. I'll give him that. He was almost everything I wanted him to be in that situation at first. Like, he helped calm me down. He logically explained it's not my fault, all of that. And then he promised that he would be there if I needed him. And that's all I wanted. I didn't even need him to promise that, because looking in hindsight, I wish he didn't promise anything, because he clearly couldn't deliver. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I've been, there were some things that I've done towards him and people around him that, as I say, I shouldn't have done, and I take complete responsibility for that. But at the same time, I did need him, or somebody, just anybody. It wasn't even him. It wasn't the fact that it was him. It was more the fact that he was just the closest guy to me at the time. I was already talking to somebody, but it wasn't like serious. So it was like he was the first person I went to, other than my friend. So anxiety was one of the main things that hit me. what came with that were a multitude of different things, and I don't think I can properly explain it because I'm not diagnosed with certain things. I have discussed things with a therapist who has pointed me towards certain things and said it could be this, but hasn't diagnosed me because I haven't, as far as I'm aware, a GP can diagnose and a therapist can't. They can suggest or refer me to a GP or something like that. Psychiatrist, I don't know, because a GP diagnosed me with anxiety with the consultation of a therapist. I get symptoms of depersonalization, and that happened, it was really bad when it first happened, and I kind of got, it didn't get better, I just got used to it. I think it was more like something I lived with, and I find myself doing it, like I can snap myself out of it a bit easier, but since I found out that the case had been dropped, it's been a lot worse. I sometimes look at myself in the mirror and it's like it's almost like I'm looking through myself. That's the best way of explaining it. It's kind of like I'm looking at somebody else. I'm looking at somebody else, or there's just nobody there. Like, it kind of is a mix between them, and I don't know how to explain it better than that. And I know that's confusing, but that's just how it is. And sometimes I'll get days where I'll be walking around and I will just not feel like I'm living at all. It'll just be like 1 minute I'm here, 1 minute I'm not, 1 minute I'm here, 1 minute I'm not. And I think that was the scariest thing, just losing myself. I'm trying so hard not to cry in this video. Another thing that came with that were sleep problems. So I've had problems with sleep ever since it happened. It's never gone away. It got better, so I found ways of coping with it. So what would happen was I'd go to bed later and just wake up later than usual. So it wasn't like I wasn't getting sleep, it was more, or as time went on, it wasn't like I wasn't getting sleep, it was just more the time schedule changed. But at the start and now, because of finding out this, it's almost like a fear to go to sleep. And I know that sounds so silly, or it might not, I don't know, but to me that sounds so silly to say out loud. But I have nightmares every night or every other night. Sometimes I just wake up, go back to sleep, like I just ignore it because it's like, sometimes I can't, sometimes I wake up and I will just sit upright in bed and I won't know where I am. Sometimes I'll feel like I'm drowning. I think that's the most common one that I get at the moment. It's like somebody's holding me down and I have to struggle to wake up. And then when I do wake up, I get issues of sleep paralysis, and that went away and I've come back, and that is terrifying. I think anybody who has experienced sleep paralysis, it usually happens when you're younger. It's a common thing in along with night terrors, which I get too, in teens or pre-teens. But it's like where you wake up and you just can't move, and you try so hard to move and you can't, because basically your mind wakes up quicker than your body. I think that's how it works. But what happens for me as well is I will feel like the whole bed is like shaking. It's like something's shaking me. So I will wake myself up, but I won't be awake. I'll be half awake. So I'm still in a dream state, but I feel like I'm half awake. And then I'll try and move and I can't. And then I have to, like, it's like having to swim upwards out of water. It's like, that's what I mean by drowning, like. And then I just get out before I basically drown. So it's like I'm so close to drowning, and then I quickly like burst out, and then I wake up, and then I'll open my eyes and there'll just be someone standing in my doorway, and obviously there's nobody there, and I know there's nobody there. I don't believe in ghosts or anything like that, so it's not that, but it's a symptom of night terrors and that sort of thing, where apparently your dream state merges with your like real state, and that happens a lot. And then I won't be able to go back to sleep because I'm too scared to, because every time I do try and go to sleep after that, the same thing happens. And once it happens once in a night, it will happen 3 times. I can't go back to sleep after that. It just won't. which then leads me on to like mood changes. Like I found myself not necessarily an angry person, but a more closed off person. I think I've always been an open person because I don't see the point in hiding anything really. In my opinion, that's just me. I found it difficult trusting people. Even if I say I trust somebody, I find it very hard. And I know that's unusual, that happens with a lot of people. But I've never been like that, ever. I've been way too trusting usually, as people will know. I've never been to the point where, you know, I don't trust myself. There were certain people in sixth form who'd done absolutely nothing wrong, who I would walk past and just it would trigger me. And I don't they didn't do anything to me. They didn't do anything, and it was guys, but they walk past me, stand near me, whatever, and I'd have to leave because of panic attacks, anxiety attacks, because I had both. There were times in school where I walked out of class twice in one class, because I never wanted to miss class, and they always told me you can go and just chill and whatever, but I don't want to do that because then I'm getting more stressed because I'm missing, you know, lesson time when I'm doing A-levels. So I just go back to class and sit down, and then it gets the second time and I'd go again, and teachers knew about it, so it wasn't like I was being questioned or anything like that, but I always thought somebody's going to question me on it one day, and nobody did. But it's that paranoia. I've spoken about the blaming of myself, blaming of being too drunk, blaming of everything. Maybe it should have said no louder, even though I know I said no, and I said it 5 times, like 5 or 6 times. Maybe I should have told somebody about it straight away, but my phone was broken and I couldn't exactly tell the people around me because they were all friends with him. And because, as I say, I don't want to talk too much about it, but because I didn't really go into detail about the problem with what my ex said, so he was lovely to me to start with. I know I'm all over the place with this, but it's just so much. My ex was great to start with, absolutely amazing, and then he said something along the lines of, so he was 16, couldn't you have fought him off? And I think if I had to choose one thing that somebody said to me that was the most damaging, it was that. I just froze, and I think that's one thing that I had to live with. Like, I said no several times, but I didn't try and fight or anything like that. It didn't even cross my mind. Like, I didn't. And when he said that to me, I wrote between the lines after that, and that is my single most meaningful song ever. It's not my best song, but it's the most meaningful because I wrote that straight after what happened. But back onto things that came out of it. So sleep paralysis, night terrors, fear of going to sleep, nightmares, anxiety, depersonalization symptoms. I won't call it depersonalization because I haven't been officially diagnosed. Paranoia, blaming myself, the loss of friends. I've touched on this. So my ex, the guy I slept with, I pushed a lot of people away. When I started seeing my boyfriend, who was the single most wonderful person ever throughout the whole thing, and he's had to go through so much, and I don't underestimate that. I'm difficult for anybody to handle, really, and I'm so grateful. I was always so scared. It took me longer than it should have done to trust him, and that wasn't his fault. That was just me and my trust with guys. But people showing their true colours, like the guys in my life, countless other people that I don't I'm not even going to discuss, because I don't want to fall out with people. That's not the point. I'm not friends with the people I've mentioned anymore, so I feel comfortable mentioning that. And I wouldn't say I'm friends with anybody who has caused me to feel neglected, but there are just certain people I haven't got the energy. I got a lot of mean comments about it from friends of his, which I have reported to the police, but didn't go anywhere because it's kids being mean on social media, which is ridiculous. Because when this has caused me to lose some of the things that I love, or at least has diminished some of the things that I love. So songwriting was a struggle for me for a long time. I still did it because it was an outlet. Poetry has been hard. I write mental health poetry to try and help, but it's still a process, and I burst into tears every time I do it. And I'm actually surprised how well I'm doing with this video, other than that little sort of moment. But a lot of the music I used to listen to reminds me of it, and I don't know why, because there was no music playing in the background or anything like that. It just, some songs associate with it. I've had fears over destroying my relationship currently, because, and luckily it hasn't happened, or it happened once, twice, but I was always worried that like my anxiety attacks and my experience would, you know what I mean, like cause issues. And it did a couple times, but he was wonderful, like the best you could ever imagine about it. But I'm not saying any of this to embarrass him. The police in this process have disappointed me for many different reasons. So communication has been bad. I was supposed to get a message every month, an email every month. I didn't get an email every month. I got an email every 4 months if I was lucky, if I emailed them first. You get like an ISVA when you report it, so that's like they're not a counsellor, but they're like support, to support you with the process, and she's supposed to message me once every 2 weeks. I didn't get a message off of her until I messaged her for a long time. And every time I did say like I'm feeling like stressed, I've got so much work on, she's like, well, at least you're busy. You know, like it reminds me of CAMS, when I went through CAMS. And I did put a complaint in against that, and it didn't change. So when I got the phone call from the police, I hadn't heard from them without me messaging them first in 3 months. And on the phone she said, you know, we decided to file the case unless you want to appeal it. And obviously I was so exhausted, I'm not going to appeal that. And she was like, you know, we've tried to communicate with me. And I was like, oh, bullshit. I didn't say that, but you know. And then she said to me, you know, I know it's been a year, it's been hard. A year. It took them 6 months to interview one of the main witnesses. That really said a lot. But she says to me, you know, we have to think about what a defence lawyer would say. And a defence lawyer would question why you were drinking so much. And a defence lawyer would ask why you were with somebody and then you cheated on them, which is just not true. I wasn't with somebody. Not that it matters, you know. Like, cheating is bad, but like, this is rape we're talking about here, which is worse. Why was I drinking so much? Yes, I drank a lot. And I blame myself for a long time for that. And I think in this moment in time, I'm not blaming myself, but in the coming days, there will be a day when I do, because it happens. But who is anybody to tell anybody not to have a good time, not to do something that's perfectly legal? I was 18. I was in a house with people I trusted. And something awful happened, and that's not on me. It's not on me. And yet I've been blamed so many times. People coming up to me in the street yelling at me, telling me that I'm a bad person, that, you know, I'm going to hell, all this, you know. And as a Catholic, I blamed myself for even having sex in the first place. I never believed necessarily that you can't have sex before marriage or anything like that, but I suddenly, when it happened, I was like, and I sat down with the guy who was so lovely about it, and I had a breakdown with, and I said, maybe it's karma, maybe that is a thing, maybe. And I started questioning everything. That's what it does. That's what it does. It makes you question everything you say. I started thinking, like, I can't go out at night. I can't. It wasn't even at night even. I was scared to go out in the day. I was scared to go out at any time for a long time. I lock the doors immediately when I get in the car, and a lot of girls do that anyway. I will not walk alone. The first time I felt comfortable was when I came to Durham, because it was an escape and it was just like a new place. And even then, there are big problems here. And it happens everywhere, I'm not saying it doesn't. But when the first time I felt comfortable going out on my own, and the only reason I went out on my own was because I went for a run, and I'm not a sporty person, and I got catcalled 3 or 4 times on that run, and not since then. I've not gone out on my own. I can't do it, as in like out walking on my own. I've been in the car on my own. I've been to like driven to Starbucks when I was at home on my own, but I can't do it. That's most of it. I think the main problem was that I was told immediately when I first started this process, you can't talk to anybody. The police told me, do not see a counsellor, because, well, so many people, not just the police, but people told me, do not see a counsellor, because if it does go to the court, then you'll be questioned on that, and you'll be accused of like corroborating a story with the counsellor. So I didn't see a counsellor because I was like, I'm going to do anything to help this case to go quicker, really. And I had my breakdowns, and I eventually did see a counsellor in sixth form, and he was brilliant for the first 2 weeks because COVID happened. But that is the story. I've managed to stay a lot more composed than I thought I would. As I say, I did take my medication, which makes me feel a little bit more numb, I guess is the easiest way of saying it. I think the point of this is never assume what people have gone through. Victim blaming really does have awful consequences. As I say, the worst I've ever felt about myself was when a guy said, started questioning me. A guy I trusted, other guys I trusted. The gossip was damaging. There's a lot I haven't spoken about. When I'm sleeping, when my sleep is bad and my anxiety is bad, I don't need anything else. I don't need anything else on top of what happened. I don't, that's something I'm not going to go into graphic detail about, but it repeats in my mind constantly. Like I feel it. It's not like flashbacks, which I do get flashbacks, but it's more like when I'm just sitting still, I can feel it. Still to this day, it's been a year and a bit, year and 4 months, or something like that, and I still feel it. I feel like I don't fully own myself, and I'm getting there. I'm working on it, but it's a process, and I feel let down by people, by myself, by society, by the police, by everybody, and that's how so many people feel. So don't ever judge people, 1, for not reporting, 2, for feeling like they can't talk about it, and 3, for going through it, because God, there are so many times I wish I didn't report it. So many times. And now coming out of it, I'm glad I did in some respects, because I'm like, if he does anything again, which it shouldn't take another person, but if he does, that's it. But yeah, I've rambled. I hope this has given you kind of like an awareness check in on your friends, check in on people, and think before you spread gossip. Think before you say things. Just think, really. And I know some people are going to think, well, she's too composed, but start thinking about whether you have been through it. Have you been through it? Has it affected you? Have you had that experience? And I'm so sorry if you have. And if you have, I'm with you, honestly, but it's not the same for everybody. This is just my experience. I'm not saying it's the same for everybody. And I'll be okay. I'll be okay. I'll get back to kind of where I was. But thank you to the people who have been there for me. I know I've only really focused a lot on the negative, but there have been people. That one ex-police officer, my friend who went with me, other friends, a lot of friends at uni have been really helpful. And I think that's it before I keep going on. So I guess to end, me too.